Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro, the podcast where we take a look back at all the fun memories from our youth. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, and welcome to my co-host, Ike Eisenmann. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I'm glad it's fun to get our next show up and running here. This should be a very interesting one, at least for some people who are as old as we are.
Well, before we get to that, you don't have no idea that I was going to do all this stuff. Well, we just released, our first podcast yesterday. So to great acclaim everywhere. But but one of the things that I had to bring up, and like I said, you didn't know that I was going to do this. I posted it on my Facebook page, and a couple of women wrote, and I won't give last names now. One Carrie, one Vivi, wrote down, "Oh my God, I loved Ike Eisenmann. I had such a crush on him."
Oh,
so one of them did want me to mention that, so I am mentioning it, and so I got nothing, by the way, nothing for me like, oh, you're good too, but they were like,
give it time, give it some time, give it some
time. I think anyone from back in my years, like maybe teens, 20s, probably would be like, oh God, him. So not such a crush.
Oh jeez.
Maybe not. But like you said, yes, today is a fun session. We're going to be talking about the whole VHS, Betamax, breakout when we got them. There was I read so much on it yesterday, to familiarize myself before we talked about this, and there was so much that I didn't remember. That, oh yeah, that's right. I don't know, when did you get your first one? When did you get also?
Yeah, I think the whole history of this is fascinating, and I did grow up with it because, obviously, we were a show business family because my father was also an actor in Los Angeles, and my brother had started to become an actor a number of years after I got started, and just the announcement that there was a possibility for home recording of video was a huge thing for us, not only for the entertainment value of being able to record things and watch them when we weren't home, etc., but just to be able to collect the shows and anything that I was on that was on television. We wanted to be able to record because there was a growing movement when it became possible to utilize demo tapes. Instead of having to actually audition or go to an appointment, you could send a tape, but you had to acquire all that material. And higher end people were able to get things like that from professional high-end video houses, but most of the rest of us couldn't. So
I did want to ask you that when you did you get a machine earlier because you were in the business already?
We did immediately when the first Sony Betamax came out. We bought one, and it was a monstrous clunker of a machine. I mean, it was, it was like the size of practically a carry-on luggage bag, and was very expensive. They were like $1,500.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. I remember how expensive. I mean, this is like you're buying furniture. You're buying investing in a car, maybe a used car. It's unbelievable.
Oh, absolutely. And they were incredible, but they were also very limited. I remember the very first ones because the first tapes that came out were only 30-minute tapes. So you had to, if we were trying to record, obviously an hour show, we had to do this very strategic and the tape was small and it was not fast. When you wanted to stop recording and eject the tape, there's this whole the top pops up and you got to pull it out, put one in, push it in. Then it's got to thread the tape through the machine, get all set. Then you hit record. And it was it was it was a hilarious game. The second a commercial hit, we, you know, at the 30-minute mark or 27-minute mark, we'd try to eject it and get the next tape in before the show went back on. And we did not always make it. So sometimes they got clipped or cut off. It was really kind of funny. But yeah, we invested in it immediately because it was not only fun, but it was a business necessity. I mean, there practically wasn't anyone that we knew in the business that didn't buy them themselves. Yeah. But that was, I'm thinking, because even I had to do the research to find the year. It was 74, 75, I believe, when they first came out. And yeah, we bought one right away.
You got one right away. I mean, I didn't even know about that. I mean, I was like, you know, that time I was like much younger, I guess, and I didn't even aware of this till at those ages, you know, that this is a possibility.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I did, you know, I moved away late 70s. I moved to another country in the late 70s, and I didn't get back here till 81. And it was only then really that I learned about all this stuff. So I was like, I guess, totally naive at, you know, the dark ages compared to
oh, that's
a lot of
fascinating.
People.
Well, it must have been a very pleasant surprise to come back into a whole new world with all these possibilities.
So you went beta right away.
Yeah, we did. We did because, and it's interesting because even in my research, just to refamiliarize myself, right. That period of time, the VHS was also coming out. Betamax was coming out. But I think
Beta had a good couple of years lead.
Yeah, they were ahead, and the industry understanding, and I found out this was partially promoted very much by Sony, but the Betamax format was a higher quality, it had more lines of resolution. The tape ran a little faster, so the quality of the video recording was visibly better than VHS. And I do remember, because I have nearly all of the television shows I did on 60-minute Betamax cassettes. Wow. And when it recorded at the normal speed, because that was one of the other limitations, and that was part of the format wars that ended up coming into play when VHS entered the market. You could only record 60 minutes on a Betamax tape and machine. Their loads were, the cassette was slightly smaller, so they couldn't put as much tape in it as you could a VHS cassette. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but that's, you know, I think a big part of the reason why VHS ended up taking the lead, because I mean, my father was a sports guy. He liked, you know, so football and baseball.
That's what I read.
That was, yeah, it was always on here, but that seemed to be one of the primary motivating factors for why the longer VHS was more
to record the games.
Yeah, to record games, you know, that you could play back.
Which, by the way, I just, before we go, I've never understood that. I've just never understood. I'm a huge sports person too, and I've just never understood recording the game to watch later. You know,
well, I don't either, because like, given your penchant for liking time travel movies or stories, I find it incredibly bizarre that you suddenly capture time frozen. So there's no possibility that the outcome can change. It's already been pre-established. You're watching a pre-established event. Even if you don't know what it is, conceptually, I have a hard time with that. And I often can't get past it. So, you know, it kind of cracks me up.
I might record something just in case like something great happened in it that I could, but you know, it's such a different age. Back then, I guess you might be able to shield yourself from a score, from an outcome.
Yeah.
Today, I don't think it's possible. I think, you know, everyone has so much information at their fingertips right now, and people still record games, and I just can't. I mean, if I'm out somewhere that I can't see the game, I'm on my phone like every 5 minutes checking scores. You know?
Well, yeah, there's too many ways it's available to consume, and my gosh, you know, I've watched people sit. I mean, I'm sure this happens all the time, but I've watched people out on a date with their phone out because a sporting event is on, because they've just got to watch it live right there, even while they're, you know, with hopefully a significant other who's understanding, and not a new significant other that might not get it. But I will say it is great when you do get to catch a moment. And I have to say, just a couple of weeks ago, because my wife and I watch golf, we don't necessarily, sometimes we'll DVR it if it's a major tournament just to watch later in the day. But even that's not quite that interesting to us. But we were sitting watching a tournament, and Jordan Spieth made a hole in one on one of the holes during the tournament. And I have never seen a golfer execute a hole in one live on television, because usually they happen, but it's usually on another hole where they're actually not covering it live, and they'll replay it and say, this just happened on 7. But I was sitting there and I just started screaming. It was like, I've never been more excited about a sporting moment in my life, which is so silly to say with all the amazing things that have happened out there that I know I've seen in Super Bowls and all that stuff. But I was just like beside myself, because I was watching a hole in one actually happen right in front of my eyes. So yeah, anyway, I never got that.
Have you ever played a hole in one? Have you ever gotten a hole in one?
Oh my gosh, no, not even close. I'm betting right now that my wife is going to do it first, because where we play, she has such a perfect straight shot, and the hole's just the right distance for her, that if she gets a good roll, and she came really close a few weeks back, and I said, you're going to be the one, it's going to be this one, and you're going to be the one. I know it's going to happen. So, but we'll see, you know, usually that's just a whole bunch of luck, but when you see a pro do it, it's an extraordinary thing.
Oh, sure. But all right, so yeah. Let me get back now.
Yeah.
Betamax. I didn't know anything about, when I got back, I came back into the United States in 81, and I think they were still pricey then, but not as pricey as they had been, but they were still, because my parents didn't get one. They just did not get one. It was a waste. It was not a necessity, I guess, to spend any sort of money for something like this. You know, just watch the show. And I had wanted one so badly. You know, a couple of my friends already had them at that point. We got our first one, and it was a VHS. My dad used to be a teacher, but, you know, on weekends he would work in the flea market to you know, I guess bring in some extra income. We sold, you know, everyone in my family sold like electronics on like radios and Walkmans, had like, you know, at that time in the flea market. So my dad did that, and I remember one guy came in with a VCR and like offered to trade it, and we had to check to trade it in for something else there too. And my dad knew how badly I wanted it. That was a used VCR was our first entry. It was probably like around 83 or so into this new technology, which is like already 5-10 years old. But so that was my first foray into the video recording system. And when we got home, I was thrilled. All of a sudden, I'm recording TV shows. I still don't believe, you'll probably know better than me, the renting movies. I don't think that came on, because I think renting, yes, but buying, no, because buying was still expensive, I think, to buy a movie.
Yes, absolutely. VHS tapes. Well, I mean, you know, Betamax also came out with commercial tapes as well that were available to rent and purchase. But I remember, VHS of a movie was upwards of $80-$85. It was very expensive. But rental, you know, I mean, obviously depending upon where you lived, there were, you know, rental houses kind of all over Los Angeles, and there was always one fairly close to me, even in the late 70s. And I ended up going the VHS route because it was taking over most of the videos.
When did you get your first VHS?
I'm trying to think, because I think it was when I bought my house. I was a very fortunate young man. I earned enough money in order to be able to buy my own home very early on. But I waited a while because I was trying to research it, find out what the best one to get might be, and all of a sudden, there were so many like little, not so little things. They really weren't so little, but as the technology moved forward, right, from the advent in like 75, and then VHS came in probably 78, 79. By 80, 81, VHS, the VHS format and machines were available in a hi-fi version. They had hi-fi stereo on it. And when the studios started releasing their movies with this hi-fi stereo, it was phenomenal, because then you could, all of a sudden, it went from watching a movie all televisions were the same. I mean, they were just bigger screens, but the resolution wasn't any higher the bigger the screen you had. It was just a bigger screen. So that wasn't necessarily a benefit, but being able to suddenly have two audio outputs instead of one just going into your TV and coming out that speaker, you could run it through your stereo. And I invested in a nice Yamaha natural sound stereo system. It's always been my favorite. As a matter of fact, that very system, I think I probably just donated about 2 years ago, because it was always amazing and sounded so good, and I loved it. But anyway, all of a sudden, my friends and I, because of course I had the house, so all my friends would come over. We'd have pizza beer parties and watch movies, rented movies, and it was just such a great experience. You know, I'd have the speakers out wide, and it just sounded great. And that was probably, to me, one of the biggest and most beneficial and exciting advancements in video technology until the DVD, and then of course HD, right, which changed my world forever. But we'll get to that later. But yeah, I think it was probably about 1981 when I invested, and I bought, I'm trying to remember, I think it was a Panasonic, might have been, but I still spent $900 on that machine.
Oh my gosh.
It was that's why it wasn't like something I just ran out and bought, right, because I had to have it. I really waited. I waited for the prices to come down. I had to shop around, because back in those days you had to drive if you wanted to shop, or you got the you got the newspaper inserts that had ads and sales, and I can't even remember what electronics places, because there were all kinds of different electronics places selling the machines.
Well, we had in New York, we had Crazy Eddie's. I know that was one of the big.
Yes, I remember that. I remember hearing about that place. Yes,
right.
But yeah,
prices are insane.
Yep. I ended up going in, and I bought everything. I bought the VHS machine. I bought the stereo. I bought the speakers. What else? I even invested in a new Panasonic television. Sony was always my thing. I always liked Sony TVs, but this new Panasonic television had come out that had a super sharp picture, really good quality. And I said, man, and I spent like an entire day setting it all up in my living room, excited like I got another Hot Wheels, car. It was just so much fun, and the beginning of many fun nights with my friends and hanging out at home. It didn't replace going to the movies like everybody said it would.
No, right.
I mean, but
that was the fear. I remember that being a big fear by the studios. Like, why? And that's why one of the things that studios still wanted to keep the movies, to buy them high in price, it's expensive. So you would still go to the theater instead of, getting this movie at your house that you could rewatch.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And, I even think the advent of the THX sound system and which I don't know if when that came out, that was the 5-channel system, or if it was just a really high-end 3-channel system for theaters to make sure people were going back, to the theater for the ultimate experience. But yeah, one couldn't replace the other. Yeah, there was no way. There's still
something about going to a theater, which is one of the really unfortunate things about this pandemic. And movie theater owners are really hurting now. But there's nothing like the experience of that communal experience and going out to a movie theater and seeing something with everyone else at the same time, experiencing it that way with a huge audience, the laughter, the shock, from other people. It loses something just watching it in your house all the time.
I completely agree with you. I'm just getting old, and I just don't like dealing with other people.
That's true too.
and the very beginning of
is that, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
The very beginning of this for me was going to watch Independence Day when it came out. And I went to go see it at Grauman's Chinese Theater, which is, of course, if anyone goes to LA, Cinerama Dome is one movie theater you have to go to, and Grauman's is the other one, because it is a work of art.
Sure.
And it's
the history.
Completely restored inside. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's a massive screen. And it was such a busy screening because the film had just come out, that my friends and I had to sit in the fourth row to watch it, which is, I can't stand doing, because then you're like staring up at this, this weird perspective, and it just, that was enough. But I
won't even go to the theater.
We put up with it. But some guy sat next to me, and my friends were to my right. This guy and his friend sat next to me, and this guy had a paper bag in his lap, and he just sat there with this paper bag until the previews rolled through. The entire time the previews rolled through. And then when the movie started, he unfurled the paper bag, pulls out 2 Snapples, sets them on the floor in front of him, cracks one open and sets it down on the floor, and then proceeds, and I'm not kidding you, it lasted the entire movie. That bag was full of Jolly Rancher candies. He would take them out one at a time, crinkle, 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 crunch, 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 crunch. And it drove me mad. I couldn't understand how he was enjoying this movie. And apparently, and my friend on to my right, because the movie was so loud, couldn't hear what was going on. And I said, dude, you have to switch seats with me just so you can experience what's happening on this side. So we swapped seats, and he started laughing. I thought that was kind of the beginning of my, I can't stand it. I can't stand people commenting on the movie, talking to the movie. It's starting to get on my nerves. I just want a pure experience. So anyway, probably off track a bit.
No, not at all.
But see, that was another thing about cable television, and I didn't know if we wanted to bring that into the conversation.
I was debating that too. You might as well. Yes.
Well, because that was another huge step forward in home entertainment that happened around the same time, at least for me in Los Angeles. And I had to look it up because I think I had got myself a little confused. We had a cable system come to LA called the Z Channel. And it only served kind of the greater Los Angeles area, but quickly took off. And they played all kinds of movies. And we jumped into that right away as well, because we also wanted just the alternative of being able to stay home and watch movies instead of going to the theater. And we had this ridiculous looking set-top box that had all these buttons on it that you had to punch to find the different programming on it and all that. And I don't know if that system played out anywhere else in the country, but I will say that was how I was able to watch Blazing Saddles for the first time. And for the 120th time. My brother and I watched it every single time it came on. If we were home, laughing our rear ends off, just doubled over constantly. So I've probably seen that movie more than any other because of that.
I actually saw Blazing Saddles in the theater, and I think it's 74. Is that a 74 movie? So yeah. So I saw, my parents took me because they were Mel Brooks fans. I mean, I'm still love Mel Brooks now like crazy, but I loved the movie. Then I remember loving it there. And I didn't understand a lot of it. I just enjoyed it. I probably enjoyed the crass humor of that then, but now I see there's so many different levels to that movie that now when I watched it when I was older, I got a lot of things that I didn't get back then.
Yeah.
So, but that's one of the things that made the VCR and the Betamax, because cable, I think also when you have movies that are showing in your home, you can now record movies.
Yes, exactly. And that was a very big deal because it was a very simple, everybody learned very quickly. It was a simple setup to just run your cable feed through the VCR or it was out of the cable box into the VCR, out of the VCR
right.
into your television. So you could record these movies off of cable and build quite an amazing collection. And
sure,
another technological advancement in order to protect the copyright of the films was when they started to scramble these signals, and the box itself descrambled it, and then they started trying to build the scrambled signal into the hardware of the VCR. So and some of them were quite successful, because if you did try to record these things, they came up with like snow on them. Right. They didn't look good, so they managed to do it with a lot. But I I don't know what how they accomplished all of that, but for quite a good while there, we had a lot of movies that we could just pop back on the VCR. And
now, am I misremembering? Wasn't there like a big lawsuit between the movie companies and like VCRs? Whoever made the VCR about infringing on their rights as far as you can't record home movies. It wasn't. Am I misremembering that?
I think it was attempted, but I don't know if it caught on, because what the movie industry was concerned about, and rightly so, and it still is to this day, bootleg copies being sold.
Right.
So people would record these things and then mass produce them and then sell them either at flea markets.
Right.
But I'm sure internationally this happened all the time. And that's primarily what I think they were the most concerned about. But they were, the place that you have to go all the way down the food chain to, to the casual, to the everyday person, because anyone could do it if they were of a mind to. So unless you disrupted that possibility at the home use level, there was no way to protect the industry as a whole. So I don't know. We couldn't figure out, and I don't remember. I do remember there was something like that going on, but technically you think about it, is how can you sue the VCR companies when all they're doing is it's just a home recording device? And so I didn't quite know what the nature of the lawsuit was, but they ended up creating these built-in protections, because yes, that was another thing where you could just go rent a movie at home and copy it yourself. If you had two machines, you could make your own copy that you could keep, or then turn around and reproduce. So yeah, that was another thing where they were able to scramble the signal of even on a tape so that you couldn't record it on another machine. You could only watch it. And I don't, but DVDs made it so much more complicated as well.
Here's the thing. I remember that besides the sporting events, I think that was one of the things that also with movies, once you start recording TV shows and movies in your home, the Betamax had that 1 hour limit, like you said. Right. And so now you want, and plus I did not remember this at all, but I did, like I said, I did some research about this before we were going to talk about this. I did not remember a lot of the things here that Betamax, the timing system was, very complicated as opposed to the VCR, that you could just record, set it. The Betamax only like half-hour increments at the beginning. I read, and I did not remember that at all.
It was.
You could set it up like a minute up before, a minute after.
Yeah, it was very. It was very difficult, and I mean, even with VHS machines, sometimes it was complicated, and
very much.
The joke, the cliche became, if you lost power and your VCR came back on, you just didn't bother to reset the clock because it was just too darn hard. So everybody at home had a constant blinking 12 p.m. on their VCRs, or they just put tape over it to hide it. But yeah, actually, there may have been a lawsuit from advertisers who didn't like the idea, because if you recorded a TV show or a sporting event, you could fast forward through the commercials.
Those commercials, right?
And of course, that's what we did.
Right.
We did it anyway. So yeah, there was a lot of groaning from different from different corners of entertainment about it, but there was no way to stop it. It was just a behemoth coming at us. It was just too great a thing to have.
But that's one of the things that I read is, besides that, is, besides the timing mechanism, and I was fascinated when I was watching all these things and reading up on all these things, that I forgot also VHS on the VCR, you could change channels automatically. I could record ABC on 8 o'clock and then NBC at 8:30 and, CBS at, 9:30 or whatever it is. And Betamax didn't allow that at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's really poorly designed. So
yeah, there was just a lot unfortunately about Betamax that they just didn't get up to speed with. And
they didn't think it mattered. It seems like an arrogance almost.
Yeah. I think that's ultimately what happened. And again, we had the Betamax system for many years because it was, promoted as being the best quality. And I mean, my father, who was even more kind of fastidious than I am, actually, I think when VHS came out, bought a VHS and then bought a new Betamax machine and recorded things and compared one picture to the other. And we all still thought the Beta looked better. It just really, really did. So
now, that's what I'm saying. Was there, because one of the things that I always heard that the Betamax looked better and sounded better. But, the average consumer doesn't care about that. Doesn't care about, I'm recording my TV shows. I'm not paying the extra $400 or $500 to get the Betamax to picture, it looks slightly better. And I was watching things now where they show the difference between Betamax and the VHS, the VCR or whatever. It did not seem that much of a difference to me. Maybe, I'm looking at it not as a cinephile or anything. It did not seem that much different that warranted this several $100s price, even if you were like really into entertainment. So I don't know how you looking at it like that.
Perhaps at the end of the day, especially like by the time, let's say just by the time you entered the market, VHS was getting better and better. The quality was getting better. Excuse me. But in the earlier days, from the mid 70s through, like the late 70s and early 80s, it's still those Beta recordings were just really phenomenal. And you almost couldn't tell the difference between watching it live and watching the recording. It was that clean. With VHS, you definitely could see some grain. You could see a little, it just didn't hold up as much. And, they say it was Betamax had more lines of resolution.
Right.
Which it does, but it's not that much. It was only 20% can be a lot. But, I've always been a very discerning visual person. I like the highest, crispest, best possible image to enjoy. But even I just still succumbed to the switch over when it was no longer something where, I needed it from my audition tapes or anything like that, because
that's something to consider. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, we kind of actually made those at home. So that we this is how ridiculous we were. We had 2 Beta machines, one that we could record on and another we could record on. And my dad would then we could do 2 hours where we just switched, stopped this one and started this one, and it picked up immediately. We didn't have to swap tapes, but we're also able to use it to edit. Mind you, it wasn't very clean, but edit my audition tapes from one machine to the other. So there were some practical uses for us. And so that being said, the higher quality didn't suffer as much when you made a copy of what you already recorded.
Right.
If you try to do that with VHS, it didn't hold up at all.
Started deteriorating as you go. Each recording got
very
worse
quickly.
and worse.
Yeah,
right.
very quickly. Yep.
Just going back, it's like I said, I don't think the average person, if you're recording at the time, you're recording, your Mary Tyler Moore show or whatever it is, as opposed to like, I need this to be the best possible quality, So that's why all these things with Betamax just seemed that it not conducive to being mass marketed to, the population that they wanted. I was amazed.
Yeah,
some of the things.
Yeah, it was frustrating for us as consumers as well, who wanted to stick with the format, but then the expense was just so high. The tapes were more expensive. The quality of their tapes was a little bit higher as well, and that just made it kind of wore us out.
You said you still have all your like old things on Betamax tape. Do you still have a Betamax player?
I do. I had to buy one. I had to buy three. I had to buy three off of eBay to get the one that worked. Yeah, it was not easy because I've had the tapes forever, and I've always kept them, stored them indoors, to make sure they held up and didn't degrade. But yeah, I still have the collection, and I've actually transferred almost all of them over digitally. So I have a digital copy of them now.
Smart.
And occasionally, as my, people have noticed, I haven't posted anything very recently on Facebook or Instagram, but I'm starting to do a little bit more of it, of just, segments from some of my Disney things that you can't find anymore.
Wow.
I have all of my Wonderful World of Disney shows on beta, and most of my television shows. There's a couple that I don't have that I wasn't able to acquire. But yeah, so I've got this big old box full of them tucked away in my closet right over here.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but so that was a huge thing, because I have all that stuff in ways in which, unless of course Little House on the Prairie is out on DVD, and so now, and of course some of these shows, especially the classic series, they're replayed, so there's a way to acquire them now. But many things, like even my first Gunsmoke, I actually was finally able to catch on some cable station and DVR, which I have yet to try to offload onto my computer, which I believe I can do, but I haven't tried that process yet. So yeah.
Well, are there several shows of yours that you were on, movies that you were on, that are not available anywhere still, that you don't have? You have everything.
The Disney stuff is not available in any other format. You couldn't get it because they don't replay those. And thankfully, let's see, because by the time I started working for Disney, beta came out. So and plus they reran. My shows always reran at least once, if not twice.
Really?
After the first run. And, we would look through. I mean, one of the fun games, not games, but just part of the process. And part of the process was sitting with a TV guide, the booklet that you got every week. You subscribed to the TV guide. It was a little booklet that had everything that was running on television throughout the week, 24 hours a day, and go through and look and see if one of my shows was going to be on, because quite often my name would be listed in there. And so then, of course, we'd set it up and get ready to record it when it came on, to make sure we had a copy of it. But
now I have to ask this: are you able to, just while we're on this particular topic, are you able to contact Disney and say, "Hey, could I get a copy of this thing that I was in"?
I have never tried, but I somehow doubt it. Doubt it. I don't know. I've never asked anyone at the studio about that, which is funny. It's a great question. I don't know why I wouldn't go there. I have heard, and I need to find out, just out of curiosity, not that I can get a copy, but whether or not they have to have them somewhere. They have to be stored.
Absolutely.
They have to be stored somewhere. But I believe, and this is something else I've not researched, but I believe that the Television Academy in Los Angeles has a massive collection of things that have been on television for decades. And that as an actor, if you appeared in something as a courtesy to you, they will make you a copy of something that you've been in. Now, I only heard rumors about that. I don't know for sure, and I haven't tried to do it because, yeah, there were a couple things I
maybe that's a down low thing that no one's supposed to know about.
Yeah.
you just blew it out of the water for everyone.
Well, I mean, no one ever swore me to secrecy about anything like that, but you never know. You never know. I mean, sometimes with those places, you can sit down and watch them and not necessarily take anything with you, but you could actually watch it.
Like New York, I know New York, the Television Museum, I think, like has something like that, which I've been to. Like, I requested to watch all these obscure shows, but now you can find things so many places. So whatever.
Oh yeah, but, yeah. Because I always in my life, with the advent of Disney, with the rollout of Disney Plus, so many people, so many of my fans, when I post just even photos from my Wonderful World of Disney shows, say, gosh, I'm hoping I'll get to see that on Disney Plus maybe. And I thought maybe they were going to pull some of those old classics back out, because there were just some amazing shows that they did solely for that Sunday night block. Some of them were like feature film quality. Mine weren't necessarily, they were a little bit lower budget, but they were just so much fun to do and so enjoyable to watch. We're
gonna have to do a show on on the Sunday Night Disney one time, because
I think so, because that's a rich history.
A lot of history.
Yeah. Well, okay, we're going to end part 1 of today's podcast. Look out for part 2 coming soon, and thank you all so much for listening and watching. And be sure to hit that subscribe button down there, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.